In this video, I'll show you how to create this responsive portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We will go part by part. First, we are going to create this header. As you can see, inside the logo, we have this gradient text and this little hover effects and also this button. Next, we are going to create this section, the home section. And this text also have the gradient effect. Let's see about the next one. The about section, we have the same gradient text and list of skills. And this image on the right. Next is the services section. We have this 3 cards. And finally, the contact form and the footer. If you click on this logo, it will take you back to the home section. And also, every section is responsive. So this is the home section. And as you can see, the header turns into a drop-down menu. Let's see the next one, the about section. And the cards as well. And the contact form. Footer is also responsive like this. I will explain every line of code and show you how it's done. So let's get into it. In this folder, I have the images that I'm going to use for this project. And I will create every single file from scratch to avoid any confusion. If you are going to code along with me, you can either create every file from scratch or you can download the starter files inside the description. I will create a file named index.html and a style.css and a JavaScript file, script.js. So inside the HTML, let's create the boilerplate and change the title to portfolio website and link the style sheet. And inside the body, I will link the JavaScript file as well. Let's go into the CSS file. I will select the entire page and reset the margin and padding. Set the box sizing to border box. Let's delete all the text decoration and list style as well. And I will set the scroll behavior to smooth. And this will basically make the transition between the sections more smooth. And let's set a font family. You can choose whatever font you like. Now let's create 2 variables for the background. And for the background, I will have this dark background color. And for the second background color, this one is going to be a little bit lighter. And this is it with the CSS. JavaScript file will be empty for now. Let's go back into the HTML. Now, for the icons that we are going to use, we need to link the box icons to this HTML file. You can find a link to the box icons website in the description. Click on usage and scroll down. Copy this one and paste it inside the head. And finally, let's open this file on the browser using Live Server. Now that we set everything up, we can start. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to go part by part. And the first part is going to be the navigation bar. Let's create a nav. And on the left, we will have this logo. Let's give it a class name of logo. I will open up a span. And using this span, we will give this text a gradient effect. Right next to it, we will create this unordered list with the class name links. Inside, let's have 4 links. The first one is going to be the home. Second one is going to be about. Third one is going to be services. And the final one is going to be the contact. And right next to it, we will have this button that will direct us to the contact form. So let's give the href attribute the contact. And the class is going to be btn. And between the unordered list and the button, we will put a icon that we are not going to be displaying now. We will use this icon when we create the drop-down menu for the responsiveness. Let's go into box icons and search for a menu icon. Let's use this one. Click on font, copy, and paste it in between this list and the button. Let's also give it a ID of menu. And this is it with the navigation bar. Let's style it. First, I will select the body and set the minimum height to 100 VH to make this body element cover the entire viewport. I will set the background color to the background color using the variable we just created. Let's select the nav. So I want this nav to stay at the top when you scroll. So I will set the position to fixed. And it will be fixed at the top. So let's say top 0. And width is going to be 100%. So it will cover the entire width. Padding is going to be 2em to 15%. 2em of padding at the top and the bottom. And 15% of padding on the sides. And we are going to be using this 15% on the sides for this section as well. So everything will be perfectly aligned when we finish. Let's make this a flex container and align the items on the horizontal line. And I want to separate these elements inside. So I want the logo to be on the left and the list items in the middle and this contact button on the right. So basically we need to put all the available space inside this container between these elements. And for that I will use justify content space between. Let's set the background color to this transparent black color. I will copy and paste some of the colors. If you want to use the same colors, just pause the video and type down the same. And to create a glass effect, I will use blur. 10 pixel will be enough. And I want to make sure this navigation bar stays on top of everything else inside the page. So I will set the Z index to a really high number. Now let's select the unordered list and make it a flex container. Align the list items on the horizontal line and put some gap between them. Let's select the links, set the text color to white and lower down the opacity for the hover effect. Let's also give it a transition for the hover effect as well. And when you hover over this anchor tag, we will bring the opacity up to 1. Next, let's select the logo, increase the font size, set the color to white, and increase the font weight as well. Let's lower down the opacity on this one as well, and the same transition for the hover effect. So when you hover over it, we will bring the opacity up to 1, just like we did with these anchor tags. Next, let's select the button. I will set the padding to 0.5 to 1. So 0.5 em on the top and the bottom and 1 em on the sides. Set the text color to white. Increase the font weight. Let's put some little space between the letters and give it a border radius. Increase the font size and give it a white border. And the cursor is going to be pointer when you hover over it, and this will indicate that this is something clickable. And it is actually something clickable. When you click on this button, it will take you to the contact form. Transition for the hover effect. So when you hover over it, the background color is going to be white. And the text color is going to be the background color, which is black. Now let's select the span to create the gradient text effect. So to create the gradient effect, I will copy and paste this gradient. You can pause the video and type down the same. This is just a linear gradient function. It goes to the right. It starts with this color and goes to this blue color from left to right. But now this is just a background color for the span element. To be able to put this gradient into the text, we are going to use background clip to clip the text to the background and make the text transparent. And in this way, we are going to be able to see this gradient through the text because we made the text transparent. Finally, let's select the menu. Let's make it white and increase the font size. And as I mentioned earlier, we are not going to need this icon for now. We are only going to need it for the drop-down menu. So for now, I will make it invisible by setting the display to none. And this is it with the styling of the header. And the header looks like this. The hover effects are working fine. Now we can move on to the next part. So in this part, we are going to create the home section. Let's create a section with the ID of home. At the top, I will have this image. Of course, you can use your own image if you're going to make this your own portfolio. I will be using some made up names and information as well. So right under this image, I will create a div with the class name infobox. Inside this info box, let's have a h1 with the span element that we have the gradient effect. Right under this, let's create a h3 with the same span element with the job title. Right under it, let's create a paragraph. And next, right outside this info box, I will create a button box that is going to have 2 buttons inside. And this is it with the HTML of the home section. Now let's style it. First, I will select the section and make it cover the entire page just like we did with the home. And make it cover the entire page by setting the minimum height to 100 VH just like we did with the body. And I will set the padding to 5% to 15%. So 5% padding at the top and the bottom, and 15 on the sides just like we did with the header. I will select home and make this a flex container and change the flex direction to column to bring every element inside stacked on top of each other, because we want to have the image at the top and all of these text right under it. Let's align everything in the center as well and put some gap between the elements and set the text color to white. Next, let's select the image and make it smaller by setting it to 18 viewport width. And this basically means this image is going to be taking 18% of the viewport width. Let's set the border radius to 50% to make the image circular and put some space at the top. Let's select the info box, make it a flex container as well, and change the flex direction to column to bring the text on top of each other. Align the text in the center and put some gap between the text elements. And the maximum width of this box is going to be 600 pixels. And this is also going to help us with the responsiveness as well. Let's select the H1, make it a lot bigger, and set the font weight to 500. Select the H3 as well, increase its font size and font weight. Let's select the paragraph and lower down the opacity. Then I will select the button box and make this a flex container as well to be able to put some space between the buttons. So I want to change the background color and the text color of the second button. So I will select the button box and using nth of type, I will select the second button. I will set the background color to white and text color to black, which is the background color. And when you hover over this button, the background color is going to be the background color and the text color is going to be white. And this is pretty much it with the styling of the home section. Before we check if everything is working fine, let's also style the scroll bar as well. I'm not going to be explaining this part. I already have a video about it. You can click on the card and watch it. I will select the scroll bar, set the width to 20 pixels and the background color to the background color. Let's select the thumb. So I will use the same gradient effect that we used on the span element, but with a little change. It is not going from left to right, it is going from top to bottom. Now let's see how everything is looking. And as you can see, everything is in the right place, the hover effects are working fine. We just need a little space between these two letters and that's it. We can move on to the next part. In this part, we are going to create the home section. Let's create a section just like we did with the home section and give it a ID of about. Inside, I will create another div named about box, and inside this one, let's create another one which is going to be about info. At the top, I will create a h1 with the gradient span elements. And right under this, let's create a paragraph. So now outside this about info, I will create a h2 with the same span element. Let's say skills. And right under this, let's create another one named skills. And this is going to be the div that is going to have all the skills and list elements. So inside this skills section, we will have two unordered lists that will be side by side. Let's create the first one. And each of these lists are going to have 3 list items. So the first one is going to have this span element with the gradient text. Let's say HTML. Copy and paste it. This one is going to be CSS. Copy and paste it. This one is going to be JavaScript. And now I will copy this unordered list and paste it. Let's change this to React. This one to Node. And now I will put the image inside, but outside this about box, I will put it inside the section. So right under this final div, I will put the image. And one final thing before we move on to the styling, we're gonna need a little arrow icon right next to this text. So let's go into the box icons. Before we look for the icon, let's see how it's looking. And also, now that we have 2 sections, you can see the scroll bar as well. So we are going to use this icon, click on it, and copy this font. Let's copy and paste it right next to each of these texts. And because we put these icons inside this span element, they are also going to have the gradient effect. And now that we are done with this, we can style it. Let's select about. I will set the background color to second background color and make this a flex container. Let's align everything in the center and put some gap between the elements, which is the information section on the left and the image on the right. Let's select the image. Let's select the image. Let's set the width to 30 viewport width and give it a little border radius. This one is not going to be a circle, so just 1 EM. Let's select the about box. Make this one a flex container as well and change the flex direction to column. And this time we are going to align the text on the left. Let's put some space between them as well. Let's select the H1 and make it a lot bigger. Select the paragraph and change the text color to white and lower down the opacity. And now for the skills part, this one is going to be a flex container as well. And we are going to align all the text on the left. And between the two unordered lists, I will put 10 EM of space between them. And let's select those lists. Increase the font size for the list items and the font weight. Let's make them flex containers as well and change the flex direction to column to bring the list items stacked on top of each other, and set the text color to white, lower down the opacity. And to properly align all the items inside this unordered lists, we are going to use align items baseline, and this will perfectly align them on the left, so on the baseline. And also let's put some space between the arrow icon and the text. So let's select the list items, make them flex containers, and put some space between the icon and the text. Increase the font size to 1.2. And for the hover effect, let's give it a transition. So when you hover over these list items, we are going to make them move to the right just a little bit, so 10 pixel. And let's also make those icons a little bit bigger. And finally, let's make the H2 a little bit bigger as well. And this styling is not going to be for the list item. It is going to be the span element inside this list item. Now let's see how is it looking. And everything looks fine, just some little issues. These icons and the text are not aligned on the horizontal line, and the hover effect happens too fast, so the transition doesn't work. So let's see, this is going to be for the span element, this hover effect. And inside here, we are going to align the icon and the text on the center. And also let's make them just a little bit bigger. And that is it. Now we can move on to the next part, which is the services section. In this part, we are going to create the services section. Let's create a section with the ID services. And at the top, we are going to create this H1 with the class name header. And inside, you're going to use the span services. Right under this, we are going to create 3 cards. So let's create a container for that. And for the cards, let's create a box, an H1 element with the span again. Let's say webdesign. Right under this, a paragraph. And right under this, we are going to be using one of these images that I provided you. And basically copy and paste this card 2 more times. And this is it with the services section. Let's style it. Select the services and set the background color to the background color. I will select the header and align the text in the center and increase the font size to 5 EM and put some margin at the top and the bottom and 0 margin on the sides. I will select the services container. This is the container that has the 3 cards inside. So this time we are going to make this one a grid container. And I will automatically create some columns to be able to fit these boxes side by side in according to how much space inside the viewport. And we are going to achieve that by using grid template columns, repeat, and I will use auto fit. And this is basically going to automatically fit the cards side by side. And it will calculate how much space in there. So if there is not enough space, it is going to be two cards side by side. If there is less space, it is going to be only one card. And this is going to help us with the responsiveness. And also, we need to set a minimum width and maximum width for the cards. So the minimum width of the cards are going to be 250 pixels, and the maximum width is going to be one fraction. So this basically means if there isn't enough space, these cards only get as small as 250 pixels, and if there is enough space, they can get one fraction of space each. And let's put some space between them. I will select the box and give it a 3 pixel border with this gray color. Let's give it a little border radius as well and make this a flex container. Let's change the flex direction to column, and I will use justify content center to vertically align the items on the center. And for the image, I will set this card's overflow to hidden. Also, to make the images inside fit to this container, I will use object fit cover. Let's give it a padding of 3 em on each side and put some space between the elements inside. Set the text color to white. Cursor is going to be pointer when you hover over it, and the transition for the hover effect. So when you hover over the box, the border is going to be just a little lighter version of this one. Let's select the paragraph inside the box and lower down the opacity. Select the H1 and increase the font size. Select the image. Let's set a minimum width, which is going to be 25 pixels, and a little border radius. And that is it with the services section. Let's see how is it looking. And there you go. Everything is in the right place. Hover effects are working fine. And now we can move on to the next part. In this part, we are going to create the contact form and the footer. Let's create a section with the ID contact. At the top, we will be using the same H1 we used on the previous part with the class name header, contact, and let's create a form. Inside this form, I will create a input box, and there's going to be 2 more of this box. Let's create a span, full name, and a input. The type is going to be text, and placeholder is going to be enter your full name. And let's copy and paste this. Your email, enter your email. Let's copy and paste it again. Say your message, enter your message. And outside this div, but inside the form, I will have this button with the class name btn. Submit. And this is it with the contact form. Let's style it. I will select the contact form and set the background color to the second background color. Next, I will select the form and make it a flex container and set the flex direction to column to bring every single one of these items stack on top of each other. Let's align the items on the center and justify content center. I will put some gap between these boxes. Let's select the box, make it a flex container and change the flex direction again. But this time the text will be on the left side, so I'll say align items baseline and put some gap between the input elements and the text. Let's increase the font size of the span. Let's select the input and make it a lot bigger by increasing the font size to 1.3 and padding to 1 em to 5 em. Let's give it a little border radius and delete the border and the outline as well. So when you focus on the input, which is basically clicking on the input, we will set the background to this gray color. And this is not going to be info box, it is going to be input box. And this is it with the styling of the contact form. Now let's create the footer. I will create a footer, and this footer is going to have two columns. So column left and column right. Inside the column left, I will create three boxes, which is going to be column box. And there's going to be a lot of made up information. Inside this span, I will put a icon, and right under it another span with some made up information. Let's copy and paste this column box. So this one is going to be the address, and this one is the phone number. And this is for the email address. So we are done with the column left. Now let's go into the column right. Let's create a span at the top about my services. Under this, a paragraph. And under this, a div for the social media icons. Now we are finished with the HTML part. Now the only thing left is to put the icons inside. So this first one, let's use this one, copy and paste it inside. The second one is going to be a phone icon. Let's copy and paste it here. And the other one is going to be for the email. Let's copy and paste it. And for the social media icons, let's copy this one. And Instagram. And this is the final one. We also need to put all of these elements into span elements. And it looks like this now. Only thing left is to style this footer and make the website responsive. I will select the footer. Let's select the footer, make it a flex container, and align the items in the center. So this is going to bring the column left and column right into the center. And to put some space between them, I will use gap 10 em. And let's make sure it stays at the bottom. Background color is going to be the background color, and I will set the width to 100%. Padding is going to be 5 em at the top and the bottom, and 15 on the sides. So let's select the column left. This one is going to be a flex container, and change the flex direction to column, and put some space between the elements. And inside this column left, we have these column boxes. So now they are on top of each other. Next, I will select these boxes. It is going to be a flex container, and align the items on the vertical line. So align item center, and gap is going to be 1 em. Let's also increase the icon size to 2 em. The span element is going to be bigger as well. Next, let's select column right and make it a flex container just like the other, and flex direction column. Gap between the elements is going to be 1 em, and text color is going to be white. Let's set the maximum width to 500 pixels, and the span element inside is going to be 1.3. Let's select the social icons, make it a flex container, and align the items on the left, and justify content left as well, and put some space between them. And also let's make the icons a lot bigger, and transition for the hover effect. Let's make the cursor indicate that this is something clickable. And when you hover over the icons, they are going to be white. And this is it with the styling of the footer. So everything is in the right place, but there is something weird going on with these icons. So let's see about that. So this is going to be column right. And also there is another problem with the transition. You need to put a S in here to indicate that this is time, 0.2 seconds. And there you go. The only thing left is to make this website responsive. So to create the responsiveness, we are going to have 2 breakpoints. The first one is going to be 968 pixels. And the second one is going to be 768. So inside the first one, I will select the section and set the padding to 8 EM to 15%. So the padding on the left and right will stay the same, but I increase the padding at the top and the bottom. And also we will delete the button on the header and make the menu icon visible by setting the display to block. So let's create the responsive drop-down menu. I will select the links and set its position to absolute. I want it to be at the top. Let's set the width to 100% so it covers the entire width. Let's set the padding to 1 EM to 3 EM and text color to white. I will make it a flex container and change the flex direction to column and align the text on the center. Let's set the background color to this transparent black color. And as you can see, it is not covering the width entirely. So let's set the right to 0. I will select the anchor tags and let's put some space between them using margin. So 2 EM of space between them. And these anchor tags will be displayed as block elements. Increase the font size to 1.5 and the text color is going to be white. So for now, I will set this menu to display none. And using JavaScript, we will add a active class to this links. And when the links has the class of active, we will display it as a block element. Let's also select the H1 and decrease the font size. H3 as well. And let's make the image smaller. For the about section, I will change the flex direction to column because now by default it is set to row. So the image and the information section is side by side. But when the viewport gets smaller, they are going to be on top of each other. Let's set the about section's image to 32. Make the H1 smaller. And the unordered lists are going to be smaller as well. And for the next breakpoint, let's copy and paste this and make it even more smaller. Except the image, I will make the image bigger. For the about section, I will select the skills and decrease the gap between the unordered lists. For the services section, I will select the header and decrease the font size. For the contact form as well, let's also make the span elements inside the input box smaller and the input elements as well. Let's make them smaller. So the only thing left is the footer. I will change the flex direction to column, just like we did with the about section. As you can see inside this footer, there is column right and column left, and they are side by side. And when you hit this number in the viewport, they are going to be on top of each other. Let's decrease the gap between them from 10 to 5. and align everything on the left side. So the styling part is completely done. We only need to make the drop-down menu appear when you click on the icon. So I will create two variables, the menu and the navigation bar. By accessing the document and using query selector, I will put the menu icon inside this variable. And again, using query selector, I will select the links, which is the unordered list, inside this navigation bar. And for the menu icon, I will create a onClick function. So when you click on the menu icon, we will change the class to bx-x, which is a icon from box icons. It is the X icon. So the icon is going to turn into X icon from the menu icon. And the navigation bar is going to have the class of active at the same time. And when the links have the class of active, we apply this styling, which is display block. So this list is going to get displayed. Now let's see if everything is working fine. And as you can see, the list appears when you click on this icon, and the icon turns into the X icon. Let's take a final look before we finish. The header is looking good. The home section, everything is in the right place. The hover effects are working well. Let's see the contact form and the footer. Let's click on the logo and it will take us back to the home page. Let's see about the responsiveness. The drop-down menu is working fine. Let's see the other sections. And looks like everything is working fine. So this is how we can create this responsive portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.